Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural and Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you about the difference between stimulating a muscle and engaging a muscle. So stimulating to encourage muscular growth and activation, or just engaging a muscle. And I find there's a lot of people who mix this up. They think that if a muscle somehow gets engaged, even isometrically or indirectly, that somehow that's the exact same as stimulating a muscle optimally in order to encourage growth. Now you see this a lot of times with the compound movements. You see this a lot of times with people who are programmed or brainwashed into saying, I have to do this movement because somebody said it's the most effective movement, so I have to do it. Now, I agree with starting with that strategy. I agree with saying, hey, I'm going to try to get the biggest bang for my buck and use the big body movements, the big compound movements, because there is an advantage to stimulating the overall body. And I have talked about that in the past. But I find that just because something is good for stimulating the overall system, it doesn't mean that it's optimum for all the time or optimal for hitting certain muscle groups. And you're going to notice this. So I've always said, like, use the basics, use the basic movements in your training in order to build the overall body, but you're going to notice some glaring weak links that come up from doing these supposedly perfect movements, right? You're going to notice that maybe from deadlifting, I'll use, because that's the best example of it. A lot of guys will deadlift because they said, oh, that's the best back builder. It's the best back builder. Meanwhile, a lot of them herniate a disc, or they tear a ligament, or they totally wreck their lower back, but yet their upper back is getting minimal stimulation. Sometimes they're getting a little bit of trap development, or sometimes they're getting a little bit of thickness, but their lats are not necessarily getting engaged. Sometimes they tear a bicep, saying they're doing a reverse grip. Like I said, there's some challenges with the deadlift that are not necessarily going to facilitate the best possible bodybuilding gains, although there is an argument for some gains from the deadlift on the floor, although I never do that, and I don't encourage people to do it if it's not right for them. So what I'm going to say is that I want you to expand your awareness in the fact that if you're doing a movement and you're noticing your body is developing a certain way, there is a possibility that there's going to be a more efficient movement in order to hit the area that you're noticing a weak link popping up. So say you're doing deadlifts, you got a great deadlift, you're super strong in the deadlift and everything, but your lats are lacking. You are not getting the big meaty lat type development. Well, then you know maybe you need to do more of a rowing type movement, or maybe more lat pull downs, or maybe you need to adjust your form when you are doing those other movements. And notice what part of your body hits failure when you do a particular exercise. Like when you're doing deadlifts, it's not your lats that hit failure and that's why you stop deadlifting, right? It's always going to be your lower back, right? And those are the muscles, or the areas where the muscles are going to hit failure first. It's not the lats. So when you're choosing an exercise in order to stimulate a certain area, you want that area specifically to hit failure first before all the other areas. You want that muscle or that group of muscles to be challenged the most, and that's going to give you the best stimulation for growth. It's not about just throwing the dog's breakfast at your body and saying, okay, I'm going to stimulate every single body part at once and see what happens. You know, you can do that, but you're going to notice that there's going to be certain movements that are going to stimulate certain areas, but other areas are going to be just touched, basically. They're going to be activated a little bit, but not necessarily forced into adaptation, not necessarily forced into massive growth, right? So yeah, so whenever you're doing a compound movement, just watch what muscle group is hitting failure, and you'll notice that it's possibly not the muscle that you're looking to hit failure, or not the muscle that you want to get the most development in. So by all means, continue doing your compound movements, but at the same time, develop a strategy for stimulating the muscles that you notice are lagging behind, and that's going to give you a much more efficient way of building muscle mass. I talk about this with strategic range of motion. I talk about this with choosing, you know, to keep constant tension on the muscle. These are all techniques in order to make sure that you're hitting or concentrating all of your effort on a certain area of the body that is not necessarily getting stimulated when you're doing a fuller type movement or a different type of compound and so forth, right? So yeah, this is just something for you to think about. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video because some of these videos are kind of general topics, but really what I'm trying to do is just get you to think about what you're doing strategically, so therefore you're not only not falling for the dogma when it comes down to doing a particular exercise because it's the right one, but you are also doing an exercise because it is stimulating the area and you're adjusting it accordingly. So yeah, I hope this helps you out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturallandbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. Mountain. Natural land.